So, go ahead. So thank you all for joining this evening. We are delighted to have such a diverse audience on a subject and a day that demands of us to create hope in action. This is an event for the International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day. The broader purpose of organizing this event today is to find connect, understanding, and hope through a shared connection for the cause of suicide prevention. The event is organized by the Connect Heart Mumbai, India, as suicide prevention and crisis intervention is the forte of the core team. We have Mr. Sachin Chitambaran, the founder, who will be taking us through the conversation, and we'll talk more about it later. Allow me to open the evening with Nirja, a speaker on generational diversity. This will be followed by Sachin's talk on suicidality and the role of active listening in providing emotional support, which will be followed with questions and answers and discussions, if any. May I request Nirja to please briefly introduce herself and continue.
Thank you, Renu. Hello, everybody. I'm Nirja Singh, and I speak on generational diversity. I'm a professional speaker on the subject and a part of the Professional Speakers Association of India. I call myself the senior teenager. Generational diversity is a subject that is connected with what we are here to discuss. I experienced it personally. I am a suicide survivor in the sense that I did not attempt suicide myself, but I lost my daughter to suicide last year, and in 2 weeks' time, it'll be exactly 1 year since her, passing. She died of suicide on the 7th of December, 2021. I'm here to talk about that experience and share what grew out of that event. I don't call it a tragedy, but it was a very seminal event in the sense that Aksir, my daughter's name was Aksir, and she was very representative of her generation. The kind of agency, the kind of autonomy, which also led to a certain amount of anxiety that she displayed, is something that my generation has not seen ever. And that led to certain experiences, which also made it very apparent that there was this sense of never feeling enough with Aksir. Aksir had all the check boxes ticked: good looks, talent, Ivy League education, everything. From the outside, you would wonder what really happened. And a year since, I'm still struggling. My family is still struggling with that question: what really happened? Which brings us to the question, what is it that can be done differently so that a promising potential young life does not spiral out of control? Although we are here talking about suicide, my focus has been primarily youth suicide. My interest is in young people because I do believe that I'm heavily invested in the young people. Now, with Aksir, the connection between generational diversity and the experience with Aksir was the dissonance and the disconnect. So she needed a sense of connection, the kind of support she needed from the environment, the society, her family. I don't think we were able to provide that support to her. I do believe that she's representative of the urban Indian educated youth. They struggle to find themselves, establish themselves in what I call the traumatized global order, and all the time fighting the inertia of tradition. So the Indian youth, even though they're very connected with the rest of the world, there are nuances, there are differences. The pull of tradition is far more here. There are certain differences there. In Aksir's case, her friends, society, they began to give up on her. I do believe that the real work, therefore, that we need to do is of social and cultural change. This shame attached to this word suicide, that needs to go. And that's what I advocate in my speeches, in my talks, in my writing, that we need to normalize this. This has been my experience. We may differ on this, but I've participated in Bipolar India because Aksir did have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. However, even in Caregiver Sati, there are several groups and communities that I was involved with because of this struggle with Aksir. And everywhere I've found that perhaps it's a belief with me, it's an observation that if we opened it up more to other people who perhaps are not going through those experiences, they don't know what they don't know. So we need to let them in and tell them a little more about the challenges and the struggles of what people on the inside go through, which hopefully normalizes these discussions, and the sense of shame and the sense of stigma is that much lessened. Because somebody like Aksir, she was 31 when she passed away. This January, she would have been 32. A very highly accomplished, self-respecting, independent young woman. And there is this internalizing of the stigma of mental health, of that sense of shame. And in many cases, many young people like Aksir, anger perhaps against the systems that don't function, anger about the trust deficit around, anger perhaps about the lack of communication with their own families at times because of different expectations, different belief systems, and that anger which is building up one layer upon another and then resulting in depression. So all this confusion, this heartbreak, and add to it one more thing with a lot of young people today, lack of a culture of care in intimate relationships. I feel very strongly about this because I've seen young people struggle. I've seen my own children struggle with this. There's this cancel culture, and you could be in a special relationship with somebody and yet find it very easy to walk away one day and never look back. So ghosting and breadcrumbing, all this is terminology that I've picked up from the next generation. That leaves you feeling, like I said, not enough. So Aksir was constantly looking for, she was fighting to stay alive. And there are all these myths that I've since heard from people around me, people who are close to me, that perhaps Aksir was not brave enough, or perhaps she gave up, or she was selfish, or anger about the action that she took. These are myths. These are not true. And in my talks, I try and tell everybody, I try to get it across to them that there is the amount of pain that that person is going through, and they take this step just to stop that pain. It's so intense. It's such phenomenal psychic pain that they just can't deal with it, and this action is just to stop that pain. So open up, because the onus for our collective and emotional and mental health is collective. It has to be collective. This onus cannot be just on this 16 of us sitting here, or one person, or the immediate family. It doesn't work if we function in silos. Aksir was a law graduate. She knew the Mental Health Care Act like the back of her hand. She had a master's in psychology. She herself was working. Her profession was that of a therapist. She addressed a gap in the therapy space, because a lot of young people today experiment, and well, there are consequences of those experiments, or they're trying out new things, and they're not able to have older therapists or psychiatrists really uh, empathize with the difficulties or challenges that they're experiencing. And Aksir addressed that gap, and yet, despite having intervened and taken what she called the bull by the horns, the bull of suicide, when it was her turn, there was nobody. There was nobody to take that bull by the horns for Aksir. So the question to ask ourselves is, how have we allowed ourselves to come to a point where young people today think that this is the only way out? They just don't feel that they are, they don't feel that they are an asset. They don't feel they are needed. They are in such deep pain that they want to just go. So that is a question that I struggle with. And it's very important to take away the shame and the stigma from suicide, I do believe. And Aksir used to be advocating listening a whole lot. Since then, I do believe that listening is the ultimate form of love. It's when you validate the existence of another person, when you listen to them. I do believe that Aksir was not heard enough. She mentored, she launched listening circles in a whole lot of institutions and organizations, but she herself did not find that listening. And her anthem was, on all her merchandise, she had t-shirts which said, "Shut up and listen." She would constantly say, "Shut up and listen." I think we need to listen to each other. That's the crux today. So I'll end with that to all of you. Shut up and listen. Thank you so very much for giving me this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neerja, for that sharing. It has been so enriching, is all that I can say. I guess I'll just shut up and want to listen more. So over to you, Sachin, Mr. Sachin Chidambaram, the founder of ConnectHeart. Please first introduce a bit on ConnectHeart, introduce yourself, and then take us through this journey of active listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Renu, and thank you so much, Neerja, for sharing that beautiful experience with us and taking us through, giving us a snapshot. And even calling it a snapshot may feel a bit unjustified in terms of the journey that you may have gone through as a survivor of suicide as well. And being able to openly talk about it and bring about this change in the community, I completely stand humbled in front of you, and I wish you all the more strength and love. My name is Sachin Chidambaram. I have been associated with suicide helplines for close to 13 years now, and I have been a trainer in the field of providing emotional support and active listening, especially to people who are going through suicidal ideation and high crisis situations. In my experience, it's through these experiences of training and engaging with people, over thousands of people in my in the field that I've been working in, that I've been able to identify certain qualities that are extremely, extremely important for us to be there for someone. When we say we are there for someone, what does it truly mean? And to kind of talk about that, I will be beginning my conversation around suicidality. I would like this to be an interactive session as well. So in case, I may throw in questions, and anyone would like to engage and answer or even ask any questions then during the talk, please feel free. We would welcome that. Just to introduce myself a bit more, I am the founder and lead trainer with the ConnectHeart, an organization that was developed to help other organizations and social entrepreneurs to come together to bring about a change in the social conversation around suicide through training and active intervention. Now, I'm also the Assistant Director of Training and Development with Samaritans Mumbai, a suicide prevention helpline based in Mumbai since 1993. In fact, it was founded back in 1968, but the helpline part of it got started in 1993. I'm currently also the president of Befrienders India. That's an umbrella organization that looks after close to 14 suicide helplines that are spread across the length and breadth of India. And also I'm the director of sales and operations with Suicide Prevention India Foundation, and Section 8 NGO that works again in providing suicide gatekeeper trainings across the Indian subcontinent. With my work, I have been able to support and start even the first suicide helpline in Pakistan called Bate, which is run by Umang Pakistan as well. If anyone were to seek them out in Pakistan, you may be able to find them too. It's our objective to be able to, just like Neil just said, normalize the conversation around suicide. And to understand why it is so important, I would like to start with some statistics here. So the first question to the group, if anyone is aware, can someone answer what was the number of deaths or suicide deaths that happened in India just in 2021? Yes, Dr. G.
I know the numbers in the US, considering that India is quite a lot of population, I would say maybe 1.5 lakhs.
Wow, you're quite close, actually. 1.53 lakhs was the suicides that we had in India back in 2020. In 2021, the number is actually 1,64,000 people. To get perspective on this number, that is equivalent to 449 people dying every day. And to understand this, if we think about a jumbo jet, if every single day of 2021, if there was a jumbo jet that crashed and killing each and every passenger, crew member, pilot, and navigator as well, that is the number we will be coming to. However, if such a thing were to happen, would we be thinking that there would be a big hue and cry around the subject? How many of us would be willing to book our next flight? Right? Unfortunately, the same does not apply to suicide. We were all aware of the number of deaths and the attention COVID got when it started. How some of us are still wearing the mask, aren't we? However, back in 2020, when COVID was at its worst, the number of deaths by COVID in India was 1,42,000, whereas suicide deaths were 1,53,000. 2021 is also momentous for India for all the wrong reasons, because this was the year finally we have the number of deaths by suicide has actually crossed the number of deaths by even road accidents, and leaving India to be the leading country in the world with the number of suicides. Now, the population explosion can be one of the aspects, but it wasn't COVID or COVID was considered to be one of the primary reasons, but isn't exactly the case either. If you look at the years before that, 2019, we had 1,39,000 people die. And the year before, it was 1,37,000 people die by suicide. In fact, India has been consistently having over 1 lakh suicides since 2008. So we are talking over 12 years worth of death, and we have been over 1 lakh people dying. Now, the numbers, it may look a bit scary right now, but it doesn't quite tell you the seriousness of the problem. When we are talking about 1,64,000 people dying by suicide, we forget to understand that not every attempt of suicide gets completed. And for us to understand this, for 1,64,000 people to die, for every suicide to be completed, there are 25 attempts that take place as per WHO. Now, just by that, would anyone be able to do some fast maths and understand if 1,64,000 people died by suicide, how many attempts are we talking about in 2021?
What are we?
Sorry? If the mobile phone is a bit further away, let me help you. That number is 41 lakhs. 41 lakh attempts mean 1,64,000 people dying by suicide. But that's again not where the number ends, because not every person who goes through suicidal ideation actually attempts. And for us to figure out that number, 41 lakhs needs to be multiplied by 20. And to help you in the calculation bit, that number brings us to 8.2 crore people who have been ideating with suicide. Now, all of this is again not the real number. There was a study done by the Lancet Group where they were able to find out that the underreporting of suicide in India is to the tune of 80 to 100%.
Wow.
To understand the significance of this number, all the numbers that I previously spoke about, please multiply that by 2. So the number of suicides that we are actually trying to figure out, that we are catering to in India, is closer to 3 lakhs annually. It's closer to 82 lakhs of suicide attempts and almost 16.4 crores of suicidal ideation. Well, it is not a surprise when WHO also claimed that almost 60 to 70% of the Indian population, or maybe even the worldwide, are struggling through some mental health disorder or the other. And mental health disorders have been considered to be one of the biggest causes in terms 60 to 80% of people who die by suicide. And this was done as part of an inter-country research where they did brain scans on those who died by suicide. And what they found out was 60 to 80% of those who died by suicide showed signs of mental health disorder that can be seen through the structural change that happens in one's brain due to prolonged mental health disorder. So if that doesn't make us sit back and bring our attention to suicide, I don't know what will. Because suicide is no longer just a mental health epidemic. It's a societal epidemic. And every one of us have a role to play in this. Now, with that in mind, I would like to check with everyone as to what could be the definition of suicide or suicidal ideation. We have heard that suicide can be a sign of weakness or a sign that someone is giving up or taking the easy way out, or could be a sign of attention seeking and many such things. Why would a celebrity kill themselves? That's probably because it's their girlfriend's issue or some director who may have not given them enough screen time. But these seem to be only some binary or linear connections that we end up finding when we are not having the patience to really understand what is happening when we are talking about suicide. So to start with this, the definition for suicidal ideation will go as when the pain of living exceeds the fear of dying. I will repeat this. When the pain of living exceeds the fear of dying. I would like you guys to spend a moment thinking over the statement that I just made and to really bring this point home. I would like to ask you all, are you aware of September 11 attacks? I'm sure most of us in the group are old enough to remember that. September 11 attacks, where the Twin Towers, the airplanes crashed into the Twin Towers, which are over 200 floors high, and the Twin Towers collapsed since the steel in them melted because of the jet fuel that burned, where the heat was enough to burn through or melt steel. Now, this is not, however, the point I'm trying to make.
Mm.
During the video, if you see the videos that were there back then, you would notice that there were, in some video clips, there were people jumping
Jumping.
from over 100 floors height. My question to you guys will be, would you consider that to be suicide?
It's exactly actually what you described. I was on call on that day in New York. We're at 15 miles from Wall Street. The you said it so precisely. I mean, I know the medical definition, which actually is not, I'm realizing, truly reflective of what you said, but it's exactly that. The pain of living is greater than the fear of dying.
Mhm.
And those are the people who actually saw people catch fire. And the fuel burn injuries are actually worse than a dry fire injury. So there were two fears, what I've heard from 911 calls. There was a fear of the building collapsing because one tower collapsed in front of the other tower, and it was all a glass building, so they could see that. Plus, it was a definite feeling of impending doom. They knew they would either die because they would burn, or they would die under the rubble. For some reason, they thought there was some hope into jumping into nothingness. But they knew it would be quicker and less painful. And so I'm only imagining that's what was going through people's
Right.
heads.
Do you see how much cognition we are allowing them to go through over here as well in this example? But are we really able to put ourselves in that room on the 150th floor? What that room would look like and feel like? Are we able to see anything because of the smoke? Are we able to breathe anything? And how is that heat that can burn through steel? But when the person we saw jumping, when the people we saw jumping, would any one of us have said, oh my God, look at that, such a weak person? Or is the person seeking attention by doing this? Right? Is this person showing that they are escaping or finding the easy way out? Or maybe on the other side of the spectrum, someone even calling it a courageous thing. Would we do, or would we assign such values to that? I guess not. Because we are able to see that burning room, aren't we? We are able to see that if I was there in that position, probably that is what I may have done. So many people struggle to even see that as a suicide because rationally it fits. I can see why they did it. So obviously it was a helpless situation for them. They didn't have any choice. They had to do it. And somehow this desperation that they may have experienced feels rational enough for us. However, I have a question. And to get to that question as well, there's another analogy that I would like us to go through. We have all given exams at different points of life. Yes? Now think about it. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., you have an exam. And for that, you are supposed to be studying today. Unfortunately, there is a festival in your house and lots of relatives have come over. So what you decide as a rational student, you decided, well, my relatives would be leaving home by 10:30. So let me start studying at 10:30. I'll finish my studies by 1. And by 6 a.m., I would have done 3 revisions. And I think I feel confident enough to then approach my exams, right? Which is at 7 a.m. Now, at 10:29 p.m., the electricity in your area went off. Now, this may be more of an Indian situation, but the different countries represented may not necessarily have these issues. But the electricity went off and you're kind of stuck. But because you are a, resourceful person, what you decide is, you know what, I needed to rest as well. So let me sleep till 1 a.m. I will wake up at 1. The electricity should be back by then. And I will start studying. I may have 1 revision less, but I will still be prepared. Now, how many of you think you woke up at 1? Oh, we already knew the answer, right? We are not waking up at 1. In fact, we woke up at 7. Completely flustered, scared, frustrated, like, oh my God, I don't have time to shower, I don't have time to eat, I run. Somehow reach my college around 7:20. I meet my professor who wants to give me their peace of mind as to why am I taking it so irresponsibly. They want to give me a peace of mind. And I finally managed to reach my exam paper around 7:30, 7:40. I'm so flustered by now. Even the answers that I could have probably attempted, they don't seem to come my way. Post the exam at 9:30, I have to go to my classes. So again, I don't get to eat. I go to my classes, which is a 6-hour session. I spend the entire day there. I've been laughed at by my friends who make fun of me for messing up my day so badly. Once I finish my classes, I also managed to get into a fight with my partner because of the frustrating day it was. And somehow I'm now scared that even my relationship may be getting over. By the time I'm getting done with the day, I reach home around 9 p.m. I still haven't managed to eat or drink or do anything. I'm still somehow managing and holding on to myself. And I put my key in the lock to open the door, and the key slips and falls down. How many of us would scream?
A lot.
Now, the story doesn't end there. This entire thing was seen by Mr. D'Souza, our neighbor, our friendly neighbor. He saw that key falling and you shrieking. What do you think went through their mind?
She's drunk.
She's drunk. Oh my God, nowadays the generation doesn't have any sort of resilience. They shout at all the smallest things. Beta, should I pick up that key for you if you're finding it too difficult to open a lock? They may even try to help you out in a condescending manner. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
But tell me this, did you scream because of the key? Did you scream because you didn't study? Did you scream because you had a fight with your partner? Did you scream because you had a tough time with your friends? Did you scream because your exam went bad? Did you scream because the professor was mean to you? What reason would you attribute to this? Or would you say that it was a result of everything, such all of these things combined and resulted in me screaming? Would you all agree? Right? This is kind of how the person who's going through suicidal ideation has to deal with things. Because we are not able to see the burning room that they are in. We always find it difficult to understand what's happening with them. We look at the chabi, the key that has fallen lately. It must be, the key can be seen as a breakup and a failure in exam, a bad relationship, a bullying person around them, a bad boss, multiple reasons, anything and everything you can think of. But we forget to see that this was only the key, one key. And we fail to realize all the other factors that result in to this person feeling this way or having these suicidal thoughts. We forget to see the burning room that the person is in. Because the moment we are able to see the pain that they are in, we may be able to move on from these linear connections that we make around suicide. Suicide is a result of pain, not a result of weakness or courage, or attention seeking for that. So, what do we understand of suicide? Dr. Schneidman has helped us in understanding suicide a bit by defining 3 P's of suicide. The 3 P's are psychic, perturbation, and pressors. And I would like us to just explore this so that there is some more idea about the multifactorial nature of suicide that I would like you all to take away from this place. What do we understand by psychic? It was already kind of picked up by one of our speakers earlier. When we are talking about pain, unresolved traumas that a person has been going through, resulting in a state of pain. And all of us are going through some level of psychic at any given point of time, that the pain, the burning room that we are carrying with us. Perturbation, however, is a bit more of a tricky thing to understand. When we talk about perturbation, I would like us to go back to that room. Imagine if you were in that burning room, how would it be for you to experience if your vision is impaired? You can't see anything, you can't breathe, feel like you're suffocating, and there is unimaginable heat that you're experiencing. Would there be a feeling of helplessness, hopelessness that you may experience? Would you say that? Right? This is what we talk about. This is what we mean by perturbation. The sense of hopelessness and helplessness, feeling stuck, almost like a sense of claustrophobia and the walls coming in together, where you feel there is no way out for you. This is what we mean by perturbation. And finally, pressors, things that act as triggers that cause pain to the person, like a scenario where we talk about, for example, COVID, where a lot of people lost their livelihoods during that time. Could that be a pressor for them? Right? However, when we look at the pressor, we fail to see that there is also psychic and perturbation. And to understand this triad a bit more, I would like us to think about fire. For a fire to take place, there are three components as well. Right? Would anyone like to help me with it? There is fuel, oxygen, and heat. Right? Now, as a logical person, as a rational person, if I ask you if any one part of this triad is missing, is there a fire? Right? If there is fuel and heat, but there is no oxygen, is there fire? No. If there is oxygen and fuel, but no heat, no fire. Similarly, the three P's act in a similar fashion. Where if there is psychic and pressor, but there is no perturbation or hopelessness, helplessness in the person, no suicide. If there is perturbation and pressor, but there is no psychic, again, no suicide. This is what we end up realizing when we are talking about a suicide attempt. It is not a matter of whether the person is weak or strong when we are assigning a suicide attempt. Right? So, when we are realizing these three components of suicide, our focus from a suicide helpline, my experience comes from the suicide helpline background. The main focus that we have when we are talking about providing support to someone going through suicidal ideation, what we are focusing mainly is on the perturbation bit. Perturbation is that sense of hopelessness and that high agitation that a person can experience. And when we talk about emotional first aid, what we refer to is exactly this, where we help people ventilate their emotions, no matter how deep, dark they may be. We provide a space for them to ventilate and talk through their really difficult feelings and thoughts. And it is this space through which, when they are once able to ventilate, that you can find an alleviation in the sense of in their distress and pain that they are experiencing. This in no way means that we are helping them find their fix or a solution for their problem. What it demands of all of us as a community is not to try and be a Superman or woman and try to save them, but can we be human beings and just offer our company to someone? Are we able to be there to shut up and listen to them? while they are able to share whatever they may be going through, without trying to correct them or lead them into the light, where we don't listen to offer space, but we listen to provide a solution. I would like to see if we are able to move from this direction and connect with being human and just offer that company. There was a suicide that had happened where the person had written this note that I'm going to kill myself today. However, if one person says hello to me, I will not do it. Unfortunately, the person died. However, it brings to us something much more important. Do we really need to be experts in the field to help someone going through suicidal ideation? Or should we look into something more basic as a human connection that may even start with one hello? In UK, there's a story of an old man who retired and used to walk along the bridge, which was a suicide hotspot in Britain. And the only thing he did, and he's accounted to we have saved over 1,000 lives. But the only thing he did was anyone who looked frustrated or looked like they were going through a tough time, he would approach them and ask them if they would like to join him for a cup of tea, where he would listen to them, not tell them about all the life's glories that they have to yet see. It was not about telling them all the relationships they will be missing out and how much pressure would their mother and father go through if they did this. It wasn't about guilt tripping them. It wasn't about telling them how life is beautiful and it will get better tomorrow. But it was just about having that tea and listening to them share their story, share their pain. And the question to you guys will be, are we open to doing that? From the Connect Hut, we have series of trainings that we are doing, especially in the field of suicide gatekeeping, which is WHO recommended, where it's a simple 3-hour training that we help people to have a conversation on suicide rather than be scared of the stigma around it. We have active listening trainings on different levels, where we even train organizations that work in the area of suicide prevention, to even regular organizations and corporations where suicide has now become a part and parcel of life. So with that, I think one question that I would like to address over here that stops people from asking the question about, have you been suicidal? Is a lot of us think that if you ask the question, it may plant the idea of suicide in their mind. For addressing that, I have a simple question for all of you. How many of you are feeling hungry right now? Yeah, we have seen a couple of hands come up. Great, thank you for sharing. Now, my question, when I asked you if you are hungry, did that question make you hungry? Or did the question make you check with yourself? Hey, am I hungry?
For sure. I was so engrossed in your talk, I didn't think of food, honestly.
There you go. However, imagine if you were not hungry, you had a nice meal just before this call, and I asked you this question, are you hungry? Did that question even register to you?
Probably not.
Right? This is what we mean by asking the question. How many of us would rather go hungry than tell our relative or someone we go to that actually I am hungry? In the same way, someone going through suicidal ideation would rather not burden you by telling you from their own side, but the stigma of that pain that they are carrying is too hard. What a person going through suicidal ideation does is go through an isolation phase, where they can be so overwhelmed with pain that they may start avoiding human contact itself. And this is why it becomes pertinent for us to raise this question. Whenever we see someone going through struggle, pain, they're looking hopeless, stuck, can we ask this simple question? Have you been feeling suicidal? If you are, you can talk to me. But when you're asking this question, just make sure of just one thing. Are you ready to hear a yes? Right? Suicide is not the problem. It's not our job to villainize suicide. Because if we think about suicide as a negative thing, even when we ask the question, do you see how it may come out? You're not thinking about suicide, are you? Suicide is such a stupid idea. I hope you are not thinking it. This is not having a conversation about suicide. This is villainizing it. And I can assure you, the same way, if you were to be asked a personal question, have you got piles? The same way that you may be uncomfortable answering that question because of the stigma associated, so will the person who's going through suicidal ideation. It is probably easier for them to say no and not burden you. But if you have it in you to understand, to believe that you asking this question is not going to make them suicidal. In fact, it helps release the anxiety that the person may be going through while dealing with this all alone. So I welcome you again to ask this question and help the person talk. That is the best way to be there for someone who's going through suicidal ideation. And with that, I would like to end my talk part right here and leave the room for some questions that you may like to ask or engage. If anyone would like to share any of their personal experiences as well, we would be more than happy to listen to you.
So can I ask a question?
Most
It's something actually I would love to think through with all of you all.
Yeah.
What I struggle with is so I'm a clinician in mental health and behavioral health space, as well as a health tech owner of a software stack that actually helps in the space of mental health and behavioral health. What I struggle, so we have the clinicians, right? We have psychiatrists that are at the top of the pyramid that are very scarce. The therapists are now becoming super scarce and are a bottleneck. So the time anybody even realizes that they need help and with what, and try to get in touch with a therapist or a psychiatrist, it's maybe weeks in certain states. So now we're left with maybe pushing this down lower, right? So I think community. I mean, more than friends and close family, I think community is always around you. And what I struggle with is it's a double-edged sword. You could have a person who actually says the things they want to hear, or like you said, push them more over the edge. And I've seen it both ways, especially in adolescents and teenagers, you know, how they're slightly more, can I just say the word mean? I mean, so they're not so supportive a lot of times, or even elders who maybe because of cultural differences snub it off. So unless you were trained in some way or form how to handle certain questions where it doesn't push them further into the corner but gets them out of that little spot they're in, out of the corner, till they at least in a space where they can breathe, is my struggle. So connecting or enabling those connections in the community is always my fear. And we have a platform that they can connect, but I always am scared how to monitor that content, the conversation.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I have to look at each comment to make sure it's not inappropriate.
Yeah.
So that's what I struggle with. I don't know if there are any thoughts or experiences.
Now, in this regard, there are some statistics as well that we have. What we have found is 70% of mental health professionals in US do not have any formal training in how to deal with someone with suicidal ideation. That number in the Indian subcontinent is closer to 95% and above. Some other statistics include, just for US, out of the number of people who have died by suicide, 25% of them were undergoing therapy. as well.
Mm.
Now, this talks about a major gap in terms of the support that is required for people going through suicidal ideation. And to understand who exactly is this, it's all of us. It can be literally any single one of us who may experience suicidal ideation at some point of time. WHO statistics says 1 out of 5 people experience suicidal ideation at some point of time in their life. My personal experience has been through all the trainings that I've taken, it needs to be more, it's more around 2 or 3 out of 5, this current state. If we go by that, how many people do we see in this group right now? Right? Just by that statistics alone, at least 4 to 5 of us have had suicidal ideation. But are we able to see them, who they could be by their face? We are not able to, right? So the idea is to help increase this conversation around suicide. Also understanding, Dr. Jean, that even with lower levels of help, even if the psychiatrist therapist is not really able to help, it doesn't make the person suicidal either. So we don't assign guilt to any particular person because it is still a combination of the psychic perturbation and the pressure that they will be experiencing. It is about how can we have this conversation more openly without alienating the subject itself. And it's part of our endeavor to help more and more people understand active listening, or how we have defined it as dot listening. It's a module that we are specially prepared so that people don't act like a good listener, but have to really invest time in being a listener to someone else. So these are some of the options that we have come up with, but I'll be opening up the floor for anyone in the group as well, if they would like to add any thoughts and respond to Dr. Jean as well.
So very small comment, what we figured, so there is something called 1-800-SUICIDE text line that actually my 22-year-old started when she was 17. And I always used to be like, people are writing to you, what do you know, more than chocolates and burgers. What was great about that whole platform, which is a national platform, is they got them to go by scripts. So there are actually scripts that they have to go one by one. And in the case of psychiatrists and any licensed or certified professionals, they have something called a Columbia screen, right? So they have a assessment tool, which is 6 questions that tells you or assesses whether they're going to take their lives now or not. And then it kind of stops them from doing something and then call that number. So the script is what has trained these kids to the point now she's 22 with no training, but she could do a better job than any therapist, right? So that's one of the things that has worked.
So in this particular thing, we have ASQ, BSSA questionnaire screening methodologies as well. That is completely available. However, there is also a shortcoming in this where people take this as a point, as a tick in the box exercise.
Yeah.
That is why my question to everyone was, are you open to hearing a yes?
Absolutely.
Because even if you may be following a questionnaire, the other person, if they don't feel a sense of connect from you, it's easier for them to say, no, I'm not being suicidal.
True.
Right? So that sensitivity, that compassionate inquiry needs to be developed in us to really know, really help the other person trust us, to let them know that I care. Because I care cannot be shown through a questionnaire. You have to be there and that as well. And this is where I would like to invite all of you for that matter as well. We are opening up these trainings. We offer quite a few free sessions as well so that you can interact and engage with us to see what is it that we are trying to provide. And if you see value in it as well, we would be open to multiple level collaborations in the different countries and with different organizations as well. So that our only aim is to be able to provide this to as many people as possible in the most ethical way possible as well.
Sure.
So thank you, Dr. Jean. Would there be any questions? Anybody else would like to comment, share, or ask any questions with us as well? Please feel free. Yes, Renu.
Thank you, Sachin. And I have been associated with a hotline since the year 2000. On all realistic terms, statistics, 22 years of experience per se, off and on, maybe in between. But yet, even this evening is new for me. I'm still picking up nuances. I'm still picking up signals, which I thought I never had. And going back to creating hope through action, that action bit is something that I found with the crisis helpline and the trainings that I have undergone to be able to volunteer for a crisis helpline. That training has been one of the most empowering and powerful tools that I think I was blessed and fortunate to undergo. But it didn't just happen. I didn't just volunteer. So this creating hope through action exercise that I have not decided, it is just happening. It's like a devotion for me, has come up from where Neerja left us early in the evening on Shut Up and Listen. And there is my dear friends, my humanitarians and my humanity members. There is a dichotomy, there is a paradox, which each of us at this moment are sitting with. Because while Neerja says, shut up and listen, I'm somewhere screaming out and saying, please do away with the stigma of silence. So the stigma of silence and shut up and listen, the listening and silencing are trying to meet each other somewhere.
Mhm.
And it's been 22 years for me as a survivor of suicide. My husband had died by suicide. And when I look at Neerja, in less than 1 year, this amazing, amazing, amazing woman is going around the world trying to remove the stigma of silence. And imagine it is after 22 years, it has taken me 22 years to breathe and live and experience that stigma. And finally, today and this evening, last 4 days, I have been deliberating and I've left it open to exploration. But when I look at Neerja and then I say, Renu, if you will shut up today, you will be one of the perpetrators of the stigma. So I thank you, Neerja, for allowing me the space after 22 years to open up. And yes, I don't know how many tons of weight it is, Sachin. I don't know if you have statistics on that weight that the survivor carries, and how many ways in which a survivor navigates the nuances, the looks, the curiosity. I have no idea. I've lost count. I've just become that person. I'm just that person. And there have been so many instances, Dr. Jean, when, I've had people who have sent messages to me saying, you know what, what's this going on in her life? because probably the statistics of our demography and our age structure within my core family doesn't really tally. And then they will send messages through other people. I just ask her, how old is the husband and how old is her daughter? And then by then I've already been organically trained to handle these responses. And I say, sure, definitely. I'd love to go for coffee with this person. But just one question, if you could ask her on my behalf, does she want to know about me or does she want to know me? If she wants to know about me, you're welcome. You can share anything that you know of me from whatever sources. But if she's keen on knowing me, I'm here. I'm available. So I owe my life. I owe my children's happiness. I owe my children's healthy upbringing. I'm so proud of my 3 kids. Not all 3 are from my first husband. But if you look at my 3 kids, you won't be able to recognize that, is this one unit or is it 2 units that have become one today? And I owe all of this to the training that I underwent with befrienders. So I don't know, but thank you, Sachin.
Thank you, Renu.
Thank you for being there. Thank you so much. You are that hope. You are that hope in action.
Thank you so much for sharing something so personal, and more power to you too. I'm really, really proud and happy to have you in the team as well. Priscilla has raised her hand. Would you like to share something, Priscilla, or ask a question?
Yeah, firstly, thank you for inviting us, and I feel quite touched hearing all the sharings and the experiences. Okay. What I did not hear anybody talk about is, as a survivor, not somebody who has attempted suicide, but as a survivor who's lost loved ones. I signed up to be a social worker or a people worker when I was 16, when I lost my very loved ones. I've seen 3 consecutive suicides, or rather 4, of which 3 of them were very close to me. One of them was my sibling. It's been 29 years and I haven't, I wasn't able to come to terms until a few years ago. I had to go through a lot of healing myself. I wasn't able to let go of her spirit, right? So it's not just the pain that the person who is there deciding whether or not to let their thoughts overtake their fear, but it's also every one of them who's left behind after they're gone. It's an entire generation. It's the entire set of society and all the people that they're connected with that has an impact when that soul leaves. I think while we listen what's going on, we also should probably remind them what it is to be left behind.
Now, thank you so much for sharing, Priscilla, about your pain as well. Now, in this regard, this is also the conundrum that kind of exists between the survivors and for the future of those who may attempt suicide as well. Many of us do end up actually saying this to them, that whenever someone is attempting suicide or talks about they having suicidal ideation themselves, many times we want to talk to them about, have you thought about what your parents may go through? Have you thought about what you're leaving behind and what about them? Right? Unfortunately, this is not a helpful area because it's for the person who's going through this pain, right? Many a times the pain could, the perturbation bit that we are talking about, the hopelessness, helplessness, can also be worthlessness and uselessness. That where we may be looking at telling them, hey, have you thought about your family? One of the thoughts in their mind would be, actually, my family would be better off without me. And this is why
Very
I'm doing
true.
this,
Yeah, very true.
right?
The
So
first time when my sister attempted to commit suicide,
yeah.
I was in my school. I
Mm,
was 11 or 12.
mm,
I was the one who spotted her
wow,
sobbing.
that must have
Yeah,
been so difficult. Yeah.
right. So we were able to save her.
Mm,
We were able to revive her.
mm,
We never thought she would revive.
mm,
And I was not sure if it was the right thing to do. Now I'm not 12. I've come a long way, worked with a lot of people. If I was to look back, I'm not sure if it was the right thing to do. But after she got revived and she came back, the bonding was different. And she lived for some more years, but she had already made up her mind. So there was nothing that convinced her it was worthy living.
mm. And
Yeah.
this
So
is a very difficult area as well, right? Where if we are in love with someone, if I'm the partner of my wife, and if my wife tells me that she's having suicidal thoughts, do you see how it may leave me with this question? What did I not do to make this person feel loved? How can I have not missed a boat? What was left that I couldn't do? Because a lot of us will be going through the same pain of guilt as well. Is that what did I miss? What was left back in my love that didn't help them? But very often we are not able to see that it is their pain. The
very
psychic
true.
that they are carrying is over time. It is not something that is situational and happening at that point of time. This is a result of multiple factors. When we talk about this, 60 to 80%, we mentioned how it has got to do with mental health issues. But something as simple as hormone deficiency of serotonin, things like that. If anyone has a brain, HIV and sleeping disorders, if a person endures sleeping disorders, the chances of having suicidal ideation increases by 2 times. Any physical illnesses with comorbidity increases our chances to have suicidal ideation. Any brain trauma that a person has endured results in them encountering suicidal ideation by the time 9. So there are so many complex factors that lead to suicide. Never was one suicide there that we could ascertain like exactly this is the reason why the person died. But the ones who get left behind, every suicide affects at least 120 people directly or indirectly. And the impact of this can be so high. It is actually studied and found that those who are survivors of suicide, their chances of themselves attempting suicide in later part of their life increases by 10%. That's major. And when we are in a world where suicide is happening at the frequency that it is, we are creating a world of survivors. It doesn't bode too well. And some movement needs to begin where we also start developing human connection in this world of social media. And thank you again, Priscilla, for sharing your valuable experience over here as well, and being open to us about that. But some things for us all to consider as well. Would there be anybody else who would like to add anything, any thoughts, any sharing? Please feel free. What I would be looking at is maybe we can switch off the recording bit in case any more personal sharing may happen, in case you may not want it. For those who have had their personal sharings today, do let us know if you would like us to edit out the sharing bit in case you do not want it to appear in the video, which will be accessible on YouTube, and we will be sharing that with you over email. So do consider that.
Sachin, just to add on to that, the YouTube video will be private.
Yeah.
It will be shared between the members, you and the Connect Hut.
So all those who have would wish to also get the video, do send us an email at support. I'll just write it down. support@theconnecthut.com. And we will definitely share the link with you. Please share your email ID is what we will be giving access to the private video as well, so that by virtue of your email ID, you will be able to access the YouTube video. Okay. So would there be anybody else who would like to ask or share anything? We are still here, and I will stop the recording now.